So I'm going to carry on reading from my chee Kaew's biography. I'm on page 109. All realms of consciousness and all living beings originate from the mind. Because of that, it's far better that you focus exclusively on your own mind. There you will find the whole universe. Ghosts of the Mountain. Under Ajahn Khamfan's leadership, the monastery at Phu Gao Mountain developed into a vibrant spiritual environment where monks and nuns focused diligently on their meditation practice. Ajahn Khamfan had lived under Ajahn Sao's tutelage for several years, and he directed monastic affairs in the same spirit that his famous mentor had. At Phu Gao Mountain, a harmonious sense of fraternity prevailed, everyone living together in unity. The sight of the monks peacefully walking to the village for alms each morning was impressive. The nuns would remain at the monastery, gathered in the open-air kitchen to cook rice and prepare simple dishes to augment the food from the monks' daily alms gathering. The villagers had constructed a long bench at the monastery's entrance. Here the nuns stood and placed the food they had prepared into the monks' bowls on their return from the village. Back in the monastery at the main sala, the monks ate together in silence, seated according to seniority. Having received a blessing, the nuns retired to their quarters to have their meal, also in silence and according to seniority. When the monks finished eating, each monk washed his bowl, dried it thoroughly, replaced its cloth covering, and put it neatly away. The women washed the dishes and the cooking utensils, put everything neatly away, and swept the kitchen area clean. Once the morning duties were complete, all the monastics returned to the secluded environment of their small huts, where they concentrated on meditation, either walking or sitting. The monks and nuns remained in the forest until 4 p.m., when the afternoon chores began. Hello, Helen, peace be upon you. The monks and nuns remained in the forest until 4 p.m. when the afternoon chores began. Upon returning from the forest, they first swept the monastery grounds. When sweeping was finished, they worked together to carry water from the nearby pools to fill the various water vessels, water for drinking, water for washing feet, and water for washing alms bowls and cooking pots. Peace be upon you, Dana. Hello, peace be upon you, Dana. I'm not sure what you mean by what are you do. Yeah, I'm reading right now. It's about a Buddhist monk, so hope you enjoy it. Oh, thank you, Helen. After a quick bath, they resumed their meditation. On nights when no meeting was scheduled, they continued to practice late into the night before retiring. Normally, Ajahn Khamfan called a general meeting of the monks and nuns once a week on lunar observance days, convening at dusk. The whole assembly chanted in unison, intoning sacred verses in praise of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. After the soft resonance of their voices receded, Ajahn Khamfan delivered an inspiring discourse on meditation practice. When he finished speaking, he addressed any questions or doubts expressed by his disciples and advised them about how they could move their meditation forward. If pressing questions arose on other days, they could seek his personal advice at any convenient time. Ajahn Ham Fan maintained an exemplary mode of practice that inspired reverence in his disciples. He was gentle and gracious, possessing an unassuming manner that was always simple and down to earth. His spiritual practice and virtuous conduct reflected a truly calm and peaceful frame of mind. He was highly skilled at attaining states of deep meditative calm and very knowledgeable about the diversity of phenomena that could be experienced in samadhi. Oh, reading, Dana, I'm reading about a Buddhist monk, a Buddhist nun. Um, yeah, Helen, it's a book about a Buddhist nun. So, yeah, it's her biography. Hello, the Golden Badge, peace be upon you. Because of this, his meditative skills were compatible with Meichi Kayu's own innate abilities. His mind converged into states of deep samadhi with consummate ease, resulting in extensive contact with beings of the spirit realm. Meichi Kayu was able to take advantage of his expertise to further her own skills in the many unusual aspects of samadhi and was grateful for Ajahn Khamfan's guidance. The years Meichi Kayu spent living at Fugao Mountain were a fruitful time for her meditation practice. With each new foray into the invisible world of sentient spirits, she gained increased expertise in the realms of non-physical existence. With Ajahn Hamfan's assistance, she strengthened her ability to explore varieties of phenomena within the many lowly but subtle non-human states of existence that lay beyond the range of normal human perception. These experiences were so many and varied that she never tired of exploring the spiritual universe. To her surprise, she discovered that some types of ghosts lived in organized communities just as humans do. Contrasting sharply with the vagrant variety, these communities are governed by a leader who supervises social activities and endeavors to keep peace. Due, due to the untimely fruition of previous bad karma, some beings, having accumulated a wealth of virtue, are nonetheless reborn into the realm of ghosts. Because their virtuous characters remain, they are able to exercise great moral authority. Garnering respect from their peers who because of their own spiritual poverty stand in awe of those possessing moral power and authority. In the ghost communities, Maichi Kayu found proof that the fruits of goodness were always more powerful than the effects of evil. By the power of virtue alone, one individual is capable of governing a large community. Maichi Kayu also found that the ghost communities were not segregated into groups or castes. Instead, their social hierarchy adhered strictly to the order dictated by the specific consequences of each ghost's karma, making it impossible for them to hold the kind of prejudices that people do. The nature of their ghostly existence and their social status relative to one another was always the appropriate retribution for their past misdeeds. Occasionally, the chief ghost Maichi Kayu on a tour of his domain and described the living conditions of different types of ghosts. She was informed that the ghost world has its share of hooligans too. Bad characters who cause disturbances were rounded up and imprisoned in an enclosure that humans would call a jail. If you're asking me, Helen, yes, I am. Well, I live in Britain, but yeah, I'm born and raised in England, in Britain. My parents are Bangladeshi. Occasionally, the chief ghost guided my chee kaew on a tour of his domain and described the living conditions of different types of ghosts. She was informed that the ghost world has its share of hooligans too, bad characters who cause disturbances were rounded up and imprisoned in an enclosure that humans would call a jail. He emphasized that the imprisoned ghosts were mean-hearted types who had unduly disturbed the peace of others and were sentenced and jailed according to the severity of their offences. Those who behaved well lived normal lives as far as their karma allowed. The chief ghost reminded her that the word ghost is a designation given by humans. Ghosts were actually just one type of conscious life form among many others in the universe that exists according to its own karmic conditions. Deva consciousness is another form of sentient existence, governed by the laws of karma. Maichi Kayu's Samadhi meditation introduced her to a rich spectrum of otherworldly experience. Sometimes her consciousness separated from her body and wandered to explore the heavenly realms or the different levels of the Brahma world. She visited the various types of subtly formed beings, called devas, who exist in a divine hierarchy of increasing subtlety and refinement. Beings who have arrived at a fortunate and happy condition as a result of their good karma. She met terrestrial devas, luminous deities dwelling in forests, groves, and trees, who are born there because of their strong natural affinity to the earthly plane. Although their visible presence existed beyond the range of human senses, they were clearly visible to Mai Chi Kayu's divine eye. She viewed them as beings of contentment whose blissful lives were often preoccupied by sensory pleasures. These enjoyments were the rightful rewards of accumulated virtue. As human beings, they had amassed a store of merit by practicing generous giving, moral restraint, and meditation. It propelled them to rebirth in a spiritual heaven where they lived a blissful existence, enjoying a variety of pleasurable sensory experiences. Despite the Deva's virtue, their passive nature gave little chance to actively generate additional good karma to extend their celestial stay. Therefore, once the Devas exhausted their virtuous capital, they could expect to be reborn into the human world, where hopefully their virtuous tendencies would allow them to replenish their supply of merit. In contrast to the ghostly spirits who are trapped in a cycle of evil and wretched rewards, the Devas enjoyed an upswing in their karmic fortunes. However, the Devas do share one thing in common with all sentient beings: the burden of emotional attachments that cause them to be reborn over and over again, without any end in sight. It's important to understand that these realms exist as dimensions of consciousness and not as physical planes. By characterizing the celestial realms as being progressively higher and more refined levels of existence, and the ghostly realms as being correspondingly lower, the purely spiritual nature of consciousness is erroneously given a material standard. The terms going up and going down are conventional figures of speech, referring to the movement of physical bodies. These terms have very little in common with the flow of consciousness, whose subtle motion is beyond temporal comparisons. Physical moving up and down requires a deliberate exertion of effort, but when the mind gravitates to higher or lower realms of consciousness, direction is merely a metaphor and involves no effort. When saying that the heavens and the Brahma worlds are arranged vertically in a series of realms, this should not be understood in the literal sense, such as a house with many stories. These realms exist as dimensions of consciousness, and ascent is accomplished spiritually. By attuning the mind's conscious flow to a subtler vibration of consciousness, they are ascended in the figurative sense by a spiritual means, that is, by the heart, which has developed this sort of capability through the practices of generosity, moral virtue, and meditation. By saying that hell is down below, one does not mean going down physically into an abyss. Rather, it refers to descent by spiritual means to a spiritual destination. And those who are able to observe the heavens and the realms of hell do so by virtue of their own internal spiritual faculties. For those skilled in the mysteries of the Samadhi, psychic communication is as normal as any other aspect of human experience. Arising from the flow of consciousness, the essential message is transmitted in the language of the heart as fully formed ideas, which the inquiring individual understands as clearly as if they were words in conventional language. Each thought current emanates directly from the heart, and so conveys the mind's true feelings and precise meaning, eliminating the need for further clarification. Verbal conversation is also a medium of the heart, but its nature is such that spoken words often fail to reflect the heart's true feelings, so mistakes are easily made in communicating its precise intent. This incongruity is eliminated by using direct heart-to-heart communication. Um, Hello Reyes, sorry if I mispronounced your name. Peace be upon you. Oh, I do have Roblox, Helen, but I haven't logged into it for like over 2 years now. I can't remember my username or my password. But yeah, thanks for the advice though. I hope you are well. Keep a close watch over your actions, speech, and mind, and conduct yourself with composure. Don't talk too much and create difficulties for yourself. Watch your language and laugh with restraint. Kaew. As the years passed, my chee kayew's meditation developed a definite pattern and direction, and each new encounter with the spirit world reinforced her momentum. She spent countless hours examining the pain and suffering of other living beings, but she neglected to reflect back on herself and the emotional attachments that rooted her in samsara's recurring sequence of death and rebirth. Because her visions involved contact with the mind's internal sense fields accessed by an inward focus of awareness. She viewed them as explorations of her own mind and its profound psychic capabilities. She believed that by investigating the phenomena arising in her samadhi meditation, she could learn the truth about them, and by that means understand the mental awareness that perceived them. But although the worlds that appeared in her spiritual visions were realms of being every bit as real and distinctive as the human realm, they were also just as external to the perspective of the meditator, the one who perceived them. Though not solid and tangible, those phenomena were, by their very nature, objects of perception and thus extraneous to the awareness that knew them. By focusing exclusively on her visions, kaew's meditation had become preoccupied with the outer spiritual universe, which caused her to overlook the amazing inner world that existed within her own heart and mind. Kaew failed to understand this fundamental fault in her practice, and Ajahn Ham did not possess enough innate wisdom to point out the mistake. He himself had never progressed beyond the level of samadhi and its psychic effects, so he could not lead her beyond her infatuation with the spiritual dimension. Though his mind was rooted in exceptional powers of concentration, he lacked genuine insight into the fundamentally transient and unsatisfactory nature of spiritual phenomena. Although Kaew believed Ajahn Ham to be a competent guide, she had yet to understand her need for a truly exceptional teacher. Kaew's increasing infatuation of the varieties of conscious existence became strong. She craved for the excitement of new experiences and greater knowledge, the very craving that causes all sentient beings to wander endlessly in samsara's spiritual universe. Kaew had yet to fully comprehend this lesson about the truth of suffering and its primary cause, and Ajahn Ham, with all his powers of concentration, was unable to guide her away from the dangers of strongly favoring samadhi over wisdom. Thus Kaew became intoxicated by the peaceful tranquility of samadhi, and inadvertently had become addicted to its wondrous powers. Thus Kaew became intoxicated by the peaceful tranquility of samadhi, and inadvertently had become addicted to its wondrous powers of perception. Kaew lived on Fugao Mountain from 1937 to 1945, a period during which the Japanese invaded Thailand and dragged it into an unfolding regional conflict that soon became a major battlefront in World War II. Warplanes flew bombing missions directly over the mountain retreat, and often dropped unused bombs on the mountainside before landing at a nearby airbase. The periodic and deafening explosions sent the monks and nuns scrambling for safe cover under the overhanging cliff. Only Kaew remained unperturbed, calmly continuing her meditation without fear or annoyance. She was determined to develop her resolve by dedicating her body and mind to the search for Dharma. She knew that she had to be resolute on the path if she expected to transcend suffering in her lifetime. During one period of constant bombardment the disruption to the nuns' meditative environment became so severe that chee kaew and several other nuns moved from Fugao Mountain to Cave, to Cave for more seclusion. Hiking on looping mountain trails for the better part of a day, they arrived at an adjacent mountain range, far removed from the military's normal flight path. Was an extensive network of caves carved into the rugged mountainside, which afforded each nun a separate, secluded stone chamber where she could practice meditation in quiet solitude. Emerging from deep samadhi late on the first night, the outward flow of chee kaew's consciousness was confronted by a large serpent-like deity, which she immediately recognized as a Naga, a spiritual being whose natural environment was hollow caverns of the earth and the watery domains beneath them. Nagas had always fascinated chee kaew by their ability to change their physical appearance at will, often presenting themselves in human guise. With audacious disregard, the Naga quickly wrapped its spectral coils around her body, arched its reptilian face close to hers, and in a teasing tone threatened to eat all the nuns before sunrise. chee kaew understood the power of not being afraid to die. Face to face with its massive head, she calmly cautioned the Naga to consider the moral repercussions of its rashness. She reminded the Naga that nuns were children of the Lord Buddha, the ideal of spiritual perfection, and they should never be violated. When the Naga maintained its defiant posture, she retorted that if it really intended to eat the nuns, it should take her first. The Naga immediately opened wide its snake-like mouth and prepared to strike her. But due to the mysterious powers of chee kaew's virtue, its mouth suddenly began to burn so hot that it yelled out in pain. Chastened and humbled, the Naga sheepishly assumed the formal appearance of a young man and became friendly. In the guise of a young man, the Naga agreed to share his abode with the nuns. But he remained a mischievous creature, restlessly flitting about and never staying still. The strange young man liked to sit on a rock in the middle of the cave and play a panpipe very loudly, the sounds echoing playfully around the hollow cavern. But every time he approached chee kaew, he was seated in meditation. The sounds from his panpipe became mysteriously muffled, as though the notes could not quite emerge from the mouth of his flute. This enigma puzzled and frustrated him. As time went on, it made him increasingly uncomfortable to think that she could exert control over the sounds he made. At the same time, he grew more and more impressed by her unusual powers and despaired of ever getting the better of her. One day chee kaew saw the young man approaching with his panpipe and asked him where he was going. The Naga teased her, saying that he had intended to flirt with a woman in the village, but thought it might be better to flirt with her instead. She shot him a scolding glance and retorted that she was a woman of moral virtue who had no desire for men. She urged him to develop basic moral principles within himself, insisting that moral virtue was the basis of those spiritual qualities. insisting that moral virtue was the basis of those special qualities that every living being should cherish and hold on to. She explained that moral restraint formed a barrier that prevented living beings from abusing each other's material and spiritual wealth. And that it also protected and maintained one's own inner worth. Without morality's protective restraint, mistreatment and negligence would run so rampant in the world that there would hardly be an island of peace and security left. Chee Kaew urged the young Naga to cease his callous disregard for spiritual values and to reform his moral outlook in line with Buddhist principles. Hello, Thomas. Peace be upon you. I'm reading a biography about a Buddhist nun. Eliminating such a blight from his heart would produce only peace and happiness for himself and others. Impressed by her arguments, the young Naga accepted his faults and asked for her forgiveness. Responding to the softening in his heart, Chee Kaew exhorted him to observe the 5 basic moral precepts. I'm a mix of every religion, to be honest. My family is Muslim, yes, but I'm a bit of everything, really. I see truth in all religions. I respect all religions. What about yourself? First, you must abstain from harming living creatures. By doing so, you will learn to restrain your anger and promote loving kindness. Oh, yes. Peace be upon you. God bless you. First, you must abstain from harming living creatures. By doing so, you will learn to restrain your anger and promote loving kindness. You must abstain from taking things without their owner's consent. By discarding the mentality of a thief, greed is held in check, and renunciation is given room to grow. All improper sexual relations must be abandoned, because refraining from sexual misconduct helps to subdue sensual lust and develop a spirit of contentment. By abstaining from lying and always telling the truth, you rein in tendencies towards false speech and emphasize truthfulness in all your dealings. Abstaining from intoxicants avoids harmful mental excitement and cultivates the development of mindful awareness, which is the basic prerequisite for maintaining all the moral precepts in a smooth and even manner. Having convinced him to adopt these fundamental moral principles, Chee Kaew taught him that, in addition to moral restraint, generosity and meditation are vitally important elements, that they lay the foundation for spiritual self-reliance in this life and in all future lives. All living beings are the product of their actions, and they must take full responsibility for the consequences they encounter, for no one else can shoulder that responsibility. The nuns at Kraba Cave relied on some of the local people to provide them with raw rice and other cooking supplies. They foraged daily for forest greens, edible tubers, and wild mushrooms to supplement their diet. But their supply of rice and pickled fish depended on local supporters. The women who supplied them with basic requisites became faithful devotees, and Chee Kaew often rewarded their devotion by relating her meditation experiences as lessons in the value of moral virtue. But when news of her power to tame the Naga reached the wider village community, many local people became fearful and uneasy. Long steeped in animistic beliefs, they were superstitious and wary of anyone whose spiritual powers transcended those of the local deities. They associated chee Kaew's taming of the Naga with magical powers, which both awed and frightened them. Nakraba Cave was situated in a wooded region where village people normally hunted and gathered wild plants. Stories of chee Kaew's powers made the locals feel uneasy about setting foot in the area. Complaints began to emerge at that time. There were unseasonably heavy rainfalls day and night, which caused extensive flooding in low-lying villages. The nuns at the cave were soon accused of causing those the nuns at the cave the nuns at the cave were soon accused of causing these torrential downpours and the ensuing floodwaters. It was also suggested that the nuns' presence accounted for recent Japanese army incursions into the region. A series of unwarranted accusations eventually convinced chee Kaew that she should leave the area, although Nakraba Cave provided conditions of ideal seclusion. Circumstances in the surrounding countryside were less than favorable. She was concerned that misconceptions about her continued presence might cause others further inconvenience. She thus decided to return to Fugao Mountain with her group of nuns. If you neglect to cultivate your inherent mindfulness and wisdom, striving only half-heartedly, the obstacles in your path will multiply until they block all sight of the way, leaving the end of the road forever in darkness. Failings of the Spirit. Ajahn Ham Phan was the Ajahn Ham Phan was the inspiration behind the Fugao monastic community. Okay, that's all for today, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to everyone who watched. Thanks for the people who pressed like too. Peace be upon you all. I hope you enjoyed this reading.